Commence primary ignition.
What's up, guys? I'm Emily Swallow. If you're looking at this, you're watching the Virtual Cantina Network. This is the way.
Hey.
Hey. It's
I
finally High Republic Day.
Yes, Jamie has gotten
God.
exactly what she wanted.
Weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks of managing to shoehorn the High Republic into every show I can, and it's finally my time to shine.
Zero complaints, I'm telling you. As much as I can learn about anything, I am down. So it's cool.
She's my
Hi.
Yeah, this is it. This is my girl. Well, one of my girls. This is
good old Vern.
Christmas morning. I will say I'm having a hard time with everybody being like Vern, because she hated that name so much. So it's like weird
She only liked it.
It's really jarring to hear it. So we'll give hello.
Hi.
People joining us. Hello and welcome.
Hey, it's Melissa. Hi, lady.
Vamp for a couple minutes and get everybody into the room.
Welcome.
It's been a weird Star Wars news week again. I'm just trying to think. Like, it's been so much happening in my life that I've been like really struggling to keep track of a lot of the Star Wars stuff.
Yeah. But, it's worth it.
My brain is just all Acolyte all the time at this point.
Well, to go with a little bit of news that dropped today, if you're in the market for some legacy savers from Galaxy's Edge, Shop Disney is doing a flash sale today only. All lightsabers are 30% off, including Kanan and Ezra. So go get it if you haven't already. Cal Kestis is on there. I have all three. They're fucking amazing. So that was it. Hey, John.
Been a lot. Oh man, I'm like, it's weird. I have like these strange like butterflies talking about the High Republic because I'm like, okay, I've got to like be cool and not be an absolute feral monster talking about what is arguably one of the most important stories in my life at this point.
Yeah,
but then I'm also like, but no, I'm probably going to be a feral monster talking about the High Republic.
Girl, allow yourself the variety. Just embrace it because this is your time.
Yeah, it's weird and it's wild because like I came to the High Republic a little after it started, like after the books really started dropping. I was still like, I'd picked it up probably towards the end of phase 1 of books, and the speed at which I hammered through High Republic books, and when I say books, I mean I was reading the adult books, the mid-grade books, the young, like the young reader books. I was reading the comics. I was reading the youth comics. I was reading the picture books. I was reading literally anything I could. And I had started to just put together my own timeline of where each book kind of slotted in and where each book kind of picked up. And it's a tremendous project that if you will allow yourself to dive into the whole story and really read every facet of the story, it's some of the most beautiful storytelling there is, and certainly some of the most innovative and some of the most inclusive and creative Star Wars storytelling I've seen in almost forever. It's amazing. So it's strange because, much like I think a lot of people felt when Ahsoka came out, where there was this like, oh, you don't need to watch Rebels to enjoy Ahsoka. I kind of like, I'm having that feeling right now with the Acolyte, as we get closer to the Acolyte, with everybody saying, you don't need to know anything about the High Republic to jump into the Acolyte. And I do disagree with that. I think there's some basic stuff you kind of need to know, even though the story that we are getting in the Acolyte takes place 100 years after the events of phase 1 and 3 of the High Republic. So definitely a big gap in time, but knowing a little bit about how the phase 1 and phase 3 timeline really shaped a character like Vernestra Rwoh, I think will give us some good insight as to who she is and how she's going to be a key player in the Acolyte. So,
and I'm so excited to learn about her. It's our new favorite, Mira Lauren.
Mary Ellen.
Mary Ellen. Sorry, I can never
Yeah.
say that word. But
Yeah, it's one of those weird words where
I
it
see it
looks
with
different on
my eyes,
paper.
and my mouth doesn't want to cooperate. But yeah, she's our new
for
favorite,
sure.
joining Barris Offee and Luminara Unduli for like, you know, the standouts in this. And she's a bit of a prodigy, isn't she, Jamie?
She is, yeah. So she's during her time, she was and honestly, probably in the history of the Jedi, she was the youngest Jedi to ever be knighted at only 15 years old.
That's huge.
And I think it's, for comparison, Obi-Wan Kenobi was 25 when he was knighted. So, Obi-Wan Kenobi being who he was and being such an incredible Jedi, seeing that there was a 10-year difference in an incredible Jedi like Vernestra, is really amazing. And, we talked about this in our show with Barris and with Luminara about how the Mary Allens have a really unique connection to the Force. They tend to be really intrinsic and easy Force users, like it kind of comes to them easily. So I think you can kind of argue that Vernestra benefits from that as a Mary Allen.
She mentions the Force as kind of like a body of water that just flows, and it just comes natural to her. So her way, she doesn't command the Force to do, her powers and her abilities. She just lets it flow through her. She channels it. She's like Uncle Iroh with the lightning.
Yeah. And that's another unique part of the High Republic is that, we're introduced to these really unique Jedi across all species, and, not just human. We have lots and lots of unique and very diverse Jedi. And there's a lot of focus in the books about how each Jedi interprets the Force and how each really Jedi, cool. When they pull the Force and are either meditating or in the heat of a battle or, tackling a problem, how they interact with and interpret the Force. And like you said, for Vernestra, she sees it as a body of water flowing, a river flowing. And that's her connection. Interestingly enough, Elzar Mann is much the same. Elzar pictures more of an ocean, whereas Vernestra pictures more of like a river or a stream of water.
So damn good.
Yeah, and it's I think we'd be remiss too in not mentioning like who her master was. Her master was Stellan Gios, who was also he in a lot of ways almost reminds me of Obi-Wan, especially if you ever listen to the audiobooks. He has Mark Thompson uses a very Obi-Wan kind of voice for Stellan, which is kind of neat.
Those goatees.
Yeah. Stellan was a very by the books Jedi. He was a textbook Jedi of excellence. He was a skilled fighter and just really interpreted all the tenets of being a Jedi to the nth degree. So Vernestra really had a strong mentor in Stellan.
Yeah.
And a mentor who was going to make sure that she was, as a Padawan, directed in like the ways of the Force, like not necessarily interpreting, but the ways of the Force.
Stellan Gios is Jamie's boy. She managed to get his limited edition saber in the comic book, so you may have heard us talk about Stellan on the show a little bit, but we'll get into him more in the show.
Yeah. So I think having that grounding of a really great Jedi Master, a very textbook Jedi Master, definitely helped Vernestra excel and be knighted at 15. And it also speaks to the fact that she wasn't hastily knighted. It wasn't just sort of okay, you're done, you're ready to go. Because, at 15, a lot of Padawans were kind of just getting like used to their masters and kind of just getting settled into the role of being a Padawan. Vernestra not only manages to achieve that rank of Jedi Knight at 15, but shortly, like literally within a year of her being knighted, through one of the earliest disasters in the High Republic in Phase 1, she actually takes on her own Padawan, which is
insane. It's
pretty shocking.
So rare, yeah. Now I feel like as by the book as Stellan was, and how taught her about the Jedi way, he also allowed her to be creative in the heat of battle and just kind of assess her surroundings and formulate her plan, and he supported her. So
Mm.
that's, instead of just telling her no, that is not the Jedi way within reason, he allowed her to think and formulate her game plan because he trusted her.
He did, and I think in some ways that actually almost backfired on him because she was not allowed to show off the light whip. The light whip was a big secret, so it's interesting to see because like that's such a hallmark thing with Vernestra is of course her unique light whip like you see in the photo on our layout here. Vernestra's lightsaber is really unique in that it can be a very traditional lightsaber, the blade exactly as we see them in all the other Jedi. But she has a dial on the hilt that can allow the blade to kind of just become this whip, right? Like it loosens up and it will adjust and change length.
So how did that happen? Because she's like the only one that we've seen so far that has that.
So there was another light whip in Legends, and this is sort of the first time that we've seen it since Legends has come back into canon as in the High Republic, and it was really just a matter of her kind of tinkering and understanding her own fighting style and understanding how she was going to sort of use this weapon. You also have to kind of remember that in the High Republic, up until the great hyperspace disaster, which is the very beginning of Light of the Jedi, the High Republic was pretty peaceful. So lightsabers were very much a tool of, it was just a very ceremonial thing for the Jedi. They weren't really using them in battle because there really wasn't battle up until the hyperspace disaster. So by tinkering and kind of building and developing her lightsaber, this light whip kind of came to be, and Stellan, I think, kind of knew about it, but was like, we're not doing that. Like, you can't do that. You can't do that with your lightsaber.
Yeah.
And she went sort of behind his back after she was knighted and ended up feeling such a tremendous amount of guilt about it that she went back to Avar Kriss and was like, hey, so my lightsaber does this? And Avar's like, that's cool. Don't tell Stellan. Like, that's really cool. Don't tell Dad.
Yeah, David says one step away from light nunchucks.
Listen, the way my heart flew out of my chest in that one little snippet of a bumper trailer with that light whip,
oh yeah. I could hear you from here. Like the Northeast remembers.
I felt a certain kind of way seeing it in live action, and I am so excited.
The air was just sucked out. It was
yeah. So she so she has this unique weapon, she has this unique fighting style, but she's also just really peaceful. She's like, I don't really want to get into it. And in fact, the first time we kind of really see her like use this light whip, she's literally using it to like clear out trees and bushes. Like they get stuck on this planet.
The Jedi gardener.
Yeah, they gotta like, make their path to get through this like, overgrown area. And here she comes with her light whip and she's just, moving out some
Dave,
bushes and
Keanu,
trees.
If Keanu joins the Star Wars universe, he's gonna have light nunchucks. Mark my words.
I mean, at this point,
he hated training with them for John Wick Chapter 4, so it's not gonna work.
nothing's off the table at this point.
No,
but the light whip was not something created for the High Republic. It was something that they kind of recycled from Legends. And now, for the life of me, I can't remember the other Jedi that had a light whip, but there was definitely a light whip in Legends. She's gonna look it up. It came from Legends. So yeah, so she's a very, peaceful, very diplomatic fighter, but a lot of not fighter, but diplomatic Jedi, and a lot of these Jedi, that's kind of how they operated, is they were in a time of peace, so there really wasn't a need for battle and for actual fighting or anything like that. We meet Vernestra pretty much right out of the gate. We see her a little bit in Light of the Jedi, but we really see her come out of the gate and into the darkness where she's oh my God, not even before that. Oh, my brain is so full of High Republic books. We see her first as the chaperone to
the Maya.
There you go.
She's a Dathomirian sister. So
checks out.
Next.
She started out as a diplomatic sort of babysitter, for lack of a better term, to Avon Staros, who is if you're reading any of the comics, the Staros line from like
Anna Staros.
Yeah,
okay.
It's all of her ancestors.
Cool.
But she's the daughter of a a Senator Gira Staros, and Gira's doing all of these senatorial things, and she's constantly tied up on Coruscant, doing what senators do, and Vernestra is brought on to basically watch her kid and make sure that her kid gets from point A to point B, um, in
Also
one
checked.
piece.
They were not babysitters, but okay.
Correct. I mean, babysitters without being babysitters.
Right.
It turns out it's a good thing she was there, because the ship that they were on ends up getting destroyed in a Nihil attack.
Oh no.
And
Stupid
she,
Niles.
she and the other Jedi on board, Imri Kantaros, managed to save just about everybody, but Imri's master dies in the explosion. So in going through sort of the ensuing adventure there's a lot of bonding that happens between Imri and Vernestra. And Vernestra at this point she's only 16 years old, and Imri's like 14, so he's only like 2 years behind her.
Yeah.
And she ends up, as the story kind of progresses, she ends up becoming his master, which is a very strange dynamic, to have a 16-year-old master to a 14-year-old Padawan.
Yeah, that was a trip to learn that out, because honestly, as you said, Obi-Wan was 25 when he became a master, and you think of how young Anakin was. It's he's also not too far behind, it seems like, but more of the same, but not this close. They're not both still children, technically.
No, and I think the big thing there is, we see and honor and acknowledge that Vernestra is this incredibly talented Jedi and this incredibly powerful and skilled Jedi. But I think it's also sort of setting the stage for something that's really unique in the High Republic, where a lot of Jedi in this era really, really question the Order. And they really question a lot of the tenets of the Jedi Order, and a lot of the practices of the Jedi Order. And I can't say this enough, but the High Republic, at the time of the High Republic, like, everything was really peaceful, and it was really the golden age of the Republic. And planets were joining, and incredible works of art were being developed, and this unprecedented time of peace
It was like
until
the
this.
Greeks.
But it really was. And
Yeah.
they had a well-oiled functioning government, and their chancellor, Lena So, was just adored and loved, and the hyperspace routes were opening up, so they were reaching out to new planets and new worlds at this breakneck speed. And so so many of the Jedi on the Order never really had experience with conflict. And so when this hyperspace disaster happens, and a ship literally flies out of a hyperspace lane and it just explodes, and almost takes out planets and things like this, the Jedi don't really know how to respond. And what you start to see is, through Vernestra's storyline, is that she's like the gold star child, this honors kid in school, but she starts questioning these teachings and starts saying, maybe I should have stayed in school longer. Maybe I should have stayed with my master longer. Maybe I wasn't ready to take on this mantle longer. And you kind of start to see this self-doubt kind of grow in her, and she's behaving in ways that are she just doesn't know how to process, because they've never had to process this before.
Right. Dave says
Yeah.
there's a lot of Jedi on sabbatical exploring themselves and the Force in the High Republic. So
And I think a lot of it is born out of this conflict. The big thing, and I remember reading this, and I talked about it on this show a lot. The hardest Star Wars book I've ever read, and I've read a lot of Star Wars books for a lot of
much
years.
Star Wars.
Such Star Wars. The
Much
hardest Star Wars book I ever read was The Fallen Star, written by Claudia Gray. It is the third of 3 adult books in Phase 1 of the High Republic, and it explores the fall of Starlight Beacon. And unfortunately, we have to get into some spoilers here, just to sort of talk about Vernestra and kind of dig into Vernestra a little bit more. But in Starlight Beacon, the station is sabotaged by the Nihil, who are, of course, the villains of phases 1 and 3. They're
Yeah.
these like jacked up, I don't even, pirates is like such a tame word to use them, but they're terrorists. I mean, they are um
I was being nice.
absolutely staunchly evil
Jerk
terrorists, sort of,
faces. Yeah.
yeah, working under the order of Marcion Rowe, who has it out for the Jedi, absolutely hates the Jedi.
Someone's got a
But
vendetta.
Starlight Beacon is sabotaged. The whole station, this beautiful station, this hallmark, the celebration of the peace that was, Lena So's great works in this era of the Republic,
Peace and
falls.
prosperity.
Yeah, it falls to the planet. The planet of Iram and Irano. It's Iram is where it falls into. It falls into the sea, and Stellan Gios, Vernestra's master, is the one who stays aboard the station that has broken in two. Beautiful station smashed in two, and he stays aboard to pilot the station into the sea so that it doesn't hit a planet and take out an entire planet. And I remember reading this and I was horrified. I was having like a visceral reaction to this book because the tension in this book is so masterfully written, and you feel every beat of this tragedy. But I remember
Dang.
when it all happened, I thought to myself, how's Vernestra gonna process the fact that, like,
Yeah.
her master just went down with Starlight Beacon?
And that also can't help her wondering if she had learned everything she could from him. Like, that probably
Yeah,
plunged her
it's
into even more self-doubt.
well, and she's definitely. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. So this is a High Republic. This is the High Republic Adventure. I think it was the High Republic Adventures annual, like one of the earliest ones, where oh my gosh, it's such a cute comic, honestly, and it just melts your heart. And then you see what happens with Starlight Beacon, and you're like, oh, I hate this.
So
uh,
I read that real quick, and oh my god, it's so adorable. And
it's got such cute
honestly,
artwork.
like, "Can I use your shoulder, master?" And I was like,
Yeah,
"Yeah, girl, get it." It was so cool. She, like, jumps off of he's like, "Of course." And as I said, he trusts her, and he knows that she's going to have a plan, and she jumps off his shoulder and, like, totally kicks ass. So
it's so for those who aren't familiar with the annual in question here, it takes place on Hynestia, and it's Vernestra's very first meeting with Stellan when she gets assigned to Stellan Gios as his Padawan. And like literally right out of the gate, they have this beautiful bond. And Stellan is like super impressed by how strong in the Force she is, but also just like how
throws him.
quick-witted she is and like how smart
Yeah.
she is. And she
Yep.
just sees things that like he himself didn't see, like the sabotage to the huts and everything. And it's just
Oh, that
such a
was,
good
like,
moment.
crazy fascinating because it's this drink that they can't drink, and it's
Yeah.
they can't ingest it, and, they're at this, like, fancy thing trying to make peace with the Hutts, with this royal family, and, to be given that the Hutts given that drink is considered insulting, and it was just a whole thing to, like, sabotage the treaty, and, Vernestra found out, and nobody else knew, so
It's it when you see these things, like everything is so intentional in the High Republic. Like there's not really any sort of throwaway character. There's not really any sort of throwaway,
and that's
interaction or anything that you're like,
um
oh, that's nice. We're never going to see that again. But this full circle moment of seeing, Vernestra kind of have to come to terms with like the loss of her master while also trying to be like the youngest Jedi master and like not the master of a Padawan who's really like 2 years younger to her, who is also struggling. Like Imri is also struggling as a Padawan. It's really heavy. I mean, it's really heavy, and it makes you wonder how this character is going to react to just trauma on trauma on trauma on trauma. And there's a lot of characters, especially Jedi, who really struggle with going from this time of great peace to this time of such intense conflict.
yeah.
Um, Imri ends up struggling a lot. Imri's big sort of thing is that he he's an empath, so he can feel and experience the emotions of people around him, and he doesn't really know how to channel that, so he gets super overwhelmed really fast. And Vernestra's like, how do I help you? How do I help you? I don't know how to do this because I'm only 16 and you're 14. I've never done this before. I'm not an empath. I don't know what to do. So you just start to see Vernestra especially questioning, was I promoted too soon? Is the order wrong? How do I take this information and put my best foot forward and just do the best I can for the order, and for Imri, and to honor, Master Stellan and the whole thing. So it's wild experiencing her trauma as the story kind of progresses. Yeah, the imposter syndrome is so real.
Yeah,
It's very that. It's very that with Vernestra. The other kind of unique thing that Vernestra has to wrestle with, which I think as we start to talk about the Acolyte, I think is going to be a key point. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how much they're really going to get into Vernestra, because it doesn't feel like she's necessarily going to be like a main player in the story. I think she's going to be a character that's kind of on the side. Is that Vernestra?
An introduction for her. I think we'll see her in something else, but I think this will just be our first foray.
Vernestra has this super cool experience with the Force where she gets hyperspace visions.
That's rad.
So, I mean, it is and it isn't. I mean, it's like having these intense nightmares that you like can't wake up from.
Across space and time. Yeah.
Yeah. So anytime she's on a ship that can make the jump to hyperspace, whenever she's in a hyperspace lane, she can fall sort of susceptible to like any other Jedi would have a vision, but she gets these very intense visions that only occur to her in hyperspace. And going back to the imposter syndrome, at first she's like, maybe they're just bad nightmares. Like, maybe I just fell asleep and there's so much going on. And I've got all this terrible stuff happening to me. Maybe I'm just having a nightmare.
It's like sleep paralysis in Star Wars.
Yeah, until it all starts to kind of come true. And she starts seeing people and scenarios and things kind of come to fruition that end up being real. And end up being a thing. So, and David, I see what you're asking, and I've thought about this a lot. Shocking to nobody. I'm gonna stick a pin in that and come back to that in a second.
Okay. I'll just start off.
No, you're cool. She ends up. I use the term freeing, but a lot of people, oh man, this is like so much spoiler in the High Republic, and there's so many stories here.
It's cool. That's why we are here to talk about it. And
yeah.
catch up later if they want to know more. It's fine.
Her visions end up taking her to the holding place, for lack of a better term at the moment. The holding place of this old woman named Mari Santeca.
Now,
Mari, go ahead.
That name is Mari. Do you think Mari is related to Lore Santeca, Max von Sydow's character in The Force Awakens?
So, short answer, yes. Long answer kind of gets into the story of the High Republic here. So we talked about the Great Works and Chancellor Lena So, and how she's kind of strengthening the Republic and building up the Republic to be the greatest it can be. One of the big projects that actually takes place in phase 2, but continues, this is a weird High Republicism, and I know a lot of people don't like this. There are 3 phases of the High Republic, 1, 2, and 3. That's all they're called. Phase 1 is what we're talking about right now with Vernestra and Stellan and Starlight Beacon and the Nihil and all this. Phase 2 actually goes back in time to talk about how the Nihil came to be. And then phase 3 picks up where phase 1 left off. So it's a bit of a weird timeline.
So it's like a weird time jump. It fills in the holes.
Yes.
How the Nihil got so nasty and so powerful and so, feared. And then it just goes back into the story.
Yeah, so it's like you start the story, you pause the story to go back, and then you pick up the story. It's kind of the best way I can kind of explain it.
Good.
But what you learn about with the Santecas is that the Santecas are a prospecting family, this very wealthy family that is known to create these hyperspace routes and these fast ways of getting from planet A to planet B and world A to world B. And it helps sort of strengthen the trade routes, and it helps to kind of strengthen the Republic. And what ends up happening is that in the Santeca family, this big prospecting family, there is this savant, this girl with this extraordinary power that doesn't need to manually map hyperspace routes. They all just live in her head. So
Oh,
she
wow.
kind of closes her eyes and she says, to get from point A to point B, you do this. And instead of having to do jump to jump to jump to jump, she just has these visions and they're always accurate.
Dang.
Well, she ends up getting abducted. She ends up getting kidnapped as a child. And the Santeca family looks at their rival family, the Graf family, and says, you stole our child, give us our child back. Turns out Mari Santeca ends up getting abducted by the Nile, and they're using her brain and all of these paths to basically create their own way of sneaking around the galaxy without anybody else knowing how to get
that's
from point A to
wild.
point B, because
Yeah.
she's the only one that knows them. So she's feeding these hyperspace paths to the Nile and saying, this is how you can get around the Republic. This is how you can get ahead of the Jedi. Like, this is what you have. Anyway, can you tell I've been like ready for this show? I've been like so
Damn,
jazzed
girl,
to talk about the High Republic.
This is like vibing. I love this. More, please.
Yeah, this is my favorite thing, and I tell you, this was like a life-changing story for me. This is where my heart lies in Star Wars. It's absolutely in the High Republic. Anyway, back to Vernestra and her weird hyperspace visions. It is my TED Talk. It truly, like, this
She's
is
on
my
that
TED
soapbox.
Talk. Anyway, back to Vernestra and her hyperspace visions. Sis has this vision of this woman, this old frail lady who's like over 100 years old, literally being kept alive by machines.
Oh, damn.
And she kind of starts to get a feel, and she's like closes her eyes and she's trying to like place this woman, and she ends up finding Mari Santeca, who's being kept alive by the Nile. She's over 100 years old,
captured since she was a child, and
just enslaved to the Nile, but she doesn't know any better. And she's it's very like Stockholm syndrome, where she's abducted as a child and doesn't really remember her family. So Marcion Rwoh is like playing nice with her and like treats her like his mom, and like gives her all these meals and these gifts and everything. But as soon as Mari Santeca starts kind of like going off the deep end, because she starts going kind of crazy with all this stuff living in her brain, like Marcion Rwoh gets really violent with her and really, aggressive with her. And he's basically like keeping her alive, even though she'll say like, I'm tired, I just want to go to sleep. And he'll like jack her up full of stimulants just to get the information out of her brain.
Rude.
Mm-hmm. So for
special place to tell for the man.
Oh yeah, the Nihil are like some really, really awful villains. Like there's some really awful stuff in the High Republic. God, we haven't even talked about the Nameless, which we're not going to get into in this show, but like there's some really awful villainy in the High Republic.
The Nameless will go nameless.
God, there's so much. We do not have enough time in an hour-long show to talk about all the High Republic. So this is like your Vernestra Rwoh Spark Notes to get you ready for the Acolyte.
Cliff Notes.
Vernestra ends up finding Mari Santeca and ends up basically unplugging her, for lack of a better term. And Mari dies. At the hands of Vernestra, even though it's a very like peaceful, like she can see that Mari is suffering and she's been treated poorly. And Mari basically like wants to die. She's like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, this is not how anybody should live.
No.
And as a parting gift, Mari gives Vernestra one last path, one last hyperspace path. And Vernestra doesn't really know what it is. And she doesn't really know where it leads to, and she says to Mari, she's like, what is this? Like, what do I do with this? And Mari basically says, you'll know when you need to know. So Vernestra is holding on to this information of this super secret. Yeah, we haven't talked about the Drengir either. There's like so much High Republic shit happening. It's so much. But she has this like path that she's just sort of sitting on. And, we're still, as phase 3 is like well underway right now, we still are kind of waiting to see what that path is gonna.
That's cool.
What that's gonna be. So, so we've got that going for her. So we have these hyperspace visions going for her. We have the fact that she has this wild like light whip. We have the fact that she's suffering intensely from imposter syndrome and really doubting, her whole role in all of this. Phase 1 ends with the fall of Starlight Beacon, and there's one more book after that called Midnight Horizon, which is taking place concurrently with the fall of Starlight Beacon, but it's seeing how where all the other Jedi kind of are and how they're processing that and dealing with that information. Mm-hmm. The character that we don't really see at the end of phase 1 processing that information is Vernestra. We don't see her at the end of phase 1 dealing with the loss of her master, dealing with, this icon that these Jedi were all sworn to protect, that they all sort of called their second home, Starlight Beacon falling into the ocean. We don't really know where she ends up, because the end of phase 1 ends with Vernestra Rwoh basically cutting off a huge chunk of the galaxy from the Republic and says, there's a wall here. Y'all ain't getting through. Nobody knows which Jedi are on which side of the wall. Some of them are on Coruscant. Some of them are way out in wild space. People can't cross the wall, so nobody knows where anybody else is.
Further cementing his dirt dog status.
Yeah, Vernestra Rwoh kind of sucks. I mean, he's a great villain, don't get me wrong, but he kind of sucks.
Yeah. He's like Darth Maul bad.
Yeah. Vernestra ends up kind of sequestering herself off on this kind of backwater, peaceful sort of, planet, doing, just trying to sort of find herself.
Right.
And she has become at this point so disillusioned with the way that the Jedi are handling things, with all the trauma she's been through, losing her master. Imri, her own Padawan, is kind of separated from her. She doesn't really know where Imri is at this point. And she just says, I'm done being a Jedi. I have this path from Mari Santeca. I need to figure out what I'm going to do with it.
Now, to clarify, does she think that Imri is dead at this point, or does she know that he's alive and just kind of...
So that's sort of the golden question for most of the Jedi at the end of phase 1, is because this storm wall goes up and these Jedi are all separated. They're all flung to different sides of the galaxy, that nobody really knows who's alive. And with the end of phase 1 and the fall of Starlight Beacon, there's this massive list of Jedi that were known to be on Starlight Beacon that were either accounted for, meaning that they're alive and they know where they are, they're able to save them or whatnot, missing in action, so they don't know if they survived or if they didn't survive, or confirmed dead. And they don't really know, Vernestra doesn't really know what's going on with Imri. So she just throws herself out into this, I'm gonna go on my little Jedi sabbatical. I'm not gonna use the Force. I'm just gonna lay low and yeah.
Yeah.
And she's helping, she's living among these native, people to this planet. And she's, helping them and trying to solve squabbles for them as a Jedi diplomat might, and helping them build up their land and all this. And she's just sort of dedicated.
She's being a civil servant kind of thing.
Pretty much.
But a fair one.
Not she's dedicated herself to being this way seeker. So she no longer really wants to be a Jedi. She wants to be this way seeker that kind of goes where the Force calls her. And we've seen other characters in the High Republic. Orla Jarani is the one that kind of sticks out, who's a way seeker. They don't want to really follow the rules of the Order. They just kind of want to go and feel where the Force is pulling them. And
if that name is familiar, it's because Jamie has 2 of Orla's kyber crystals.
My girl. She's another one of my girls. There's a lot of really good female Jedi in the High Republic.
Yes.
So Vernestra commits herself to kind of just being this way seeker, to following the Force wherever the Force is gonna lead her. Kind of. And eventually just says, I need to go find my guy. I need to go find my Padawan. I need to go figure out what this path is all about. I need to go figure out what my next steps are going to be. And those next steps end up bringing her back to sort of where she started her story. It brings her back to Avon Staros and, brings her sort of back into the fray of jumping and trying to jump the storm wall and trying to get back to Imri. And her story kind of just continues, but you see her mature very, very quickly. And it just makes your heart break. Cause like at the end of the day, she's still like a teenager. She's like 17 at this point.
Very few years have gone by, but there, as always in Star Wars, a lot of stuff happens in a very short period of time. The thing that I had a question about, when it comes to, now we see her connection with Stellan, and we hear that she's got a lot of imposter syndrome with Emery. Are there moments where Emery and Vernestra bond like her and Stellan, or is it like a contentious relationship? Like what kind of relationship is theirs?
So it's weird because like, so the scene that comes to mind immediately is like these kids, for lack of a better term, these kids are on, they're at the temple in Coruscant, and they're all being like assigned to different missions. This isn't like I'm trying to remember. This is like towards the middle, I guess, of phase 1. And they're all being like assigned to their like different missions or whatnot. And there's this other young Jedi sort of in their age group, named Reith Silas, and he's just a very like wants to be in the archives, like doesn't want to see battle, like just wants to be like, he wants to just vibe with like become the next Jocasta Nu, like he just wants to be in the archives. And he kind of has like this crush on Vernestra, who is asexual and has no interest whatsoever in relationships. And Imri kind of sees this, and like Imri's kind of like
Star Wars
doing the like, y'all gonna date, and they kind of bond, and like you see Vernestra kind of like go to almost chide him to be like, no, that's definitely not a thing, and they end up like kind of having this very age appropriate like teenager kind of conversation around it. And there's a lot of moments where I think Vernestra, especially on like missions, where Vernestra is processing her own imposter syndrome by watching Imri do the same thing. Imri struggles a lot because, he's seeing his master, who's only 2 years older than him, excel. And, he feels all these feelings about like, well, how come I'm not that good? Like, why didn't I get those powers? Like, why didn't I get promoted at 16 or whatever? And Vernestra almost saying like, this is not the blessing you think it is. Like, this is not, like, I'm your master, so I have to guide you.
It's kind of like when you have like some major trauma when you're young, and it's like you grow up too fast. And everyone's like, oh, you've got your own, say like you have a falling out with your family and you become emancipated and you're living on your own. And everyone's like, oh, you're so cool. You're like a teenager and you have your own apartment.
Yeah.
No, not fun. You all have all this responsibility and you didn't really have time to be a kid.
It's very that. And it's very that. And while, again, I wouldn't necessarily say that like the younger Padawans are like living their best lives and having parties and stuff like that. Vernestra, by nature of becoming a knight so early, has to she's literally out there in the trenches, even if she's just doing diplomatic stuff, which is, fairly peaceful or whatnot. Even if she's just doing diplomatic stuff, like she's doing it on her own.
She's doing it for
herself. She doesn't have, somebody to kind of lean on in the middle of a conflict to be like, hey, master, what do I do? Like, she maintains that relationship with Stellan. But he's not there, like, holding her hand in those situations, or making the decisions and saying, okay, Padawan, this is what we're going to do. She kind of has to do that. And early in phase 1, when you first meet her, she handles that beautifully. And you're like, wow, this girl's put together. Like, she knows what's up. She's look at her being all strong and capable and independent.
Yeah.
But you start to see those cracks appear, and you start to see her really struggle with some of those things. And I think what we're going to see in the Acolyte, because at this point it's 100 years later. So by the time we see her in the Acolyte, she should be 100, between the ages of 115 to 116 years old. I think you're going to see a Vernestra who, from everything we've seen so far, it looks like she does return to the Jedi Order, which kind of raises some questions about what's going to happen at the end of phase 3. But I think you're going to see a Jedi who, isn't going to be bound or doesn't want to be bound by the tenets of the Jedi Order. I think you're going to see a Jedi who returns to Coruscant, but who's doing it as a way seeker. And it feels to me like Master Soul is going to be sort of the Stellan in this situation, like this very golden Jedi, this very by the books Jedi, this very
and it seems like that.
disciplined.
The little descriptions that I've seen that Star Wars has put online, Soul is like one of the top masters that they currently have in the Jedi, and that's why when you compared him to Stellan, I think that's probably going to be what pulls Vernestra into it, is because like, oh, I see this other person that reminds me so much of my master, and he needs help.
And I think she's going to be the foil to that. I think you're going to see him going by the books and her maybe going a little bit, I don't want to say rogue because that sounds really dramatic, because I don't think she would ever do anything.
Life experience is going to get in the way.
Yeah, like Vernestra is not the type of character that I would ever see to go staunchly against the Jedi Order.
Right.
Like, I don't think she's going to be rogue in that sense, but I don't think she's necessarily going to be as by the book. Yeah, because I mean, I will also tell you, everybody like in the High Republic circles right now, everybody's like, what happened to her hair? Like, what's going on with her hair? Why does she not have hair? Because as you can see, like in you know, the picture here and in all of the books and everything, she has this beautiful sort of like purpley black hair. And it is mentioned a couple times. And one of the biggest moments for all of us High Republic fans was at Phase 3, when the book cover came out with her with this chopped hair and not wearing Jedi robes. And we're like, oh, Vernestra's been through things. Like, she has this very roughly cut hair and she's wearing civilian clothing instead of her, you know, her white and gold robes, which is what we've seen her in all along. So it's just very jarring to see her start to make that transformation away from the Jedi Order. And now this is what we're getting in the Acolyte. So you kind of get like this hybrid where she's back in the robes, kind of like those aren't the formal Jedi Temple robes. So she's back in these kind of modified robes. She doesn't have her hair. And the other big thing is that in the Mirialan culture, those tattoos, every tattoo on her face, she starts out with 6 diamonds on each side of her temples, so like right along her eyes, but her whole skull is tattooed. And in the Mirialan culture, you earn a tattoo or a diamond or a square or a circle or whatever your sort of family unit's icon is for a an act of valor or an act of honor.
Girl's been doing some magical shit.
So to see that many, like, I don't know if they're ever going to touch on it. This may be me reading way too much into it, but to see all of those tattoos, I'm like, oh man, Vernestra has been through
see them
something.
around her eyes, and then just a head full of those beautiful diamonds, and it's so unique. It's kind of reminiscent to Okoye and her head paint in Black Panther. So it's very it's very cultural. So I can't wait. I hope they go into it. I know
it's going to be interesting. I'm dying to know what she's been up to. Part of the reason, and I don't know, like, I don't know. I know that the Project Luminous team, the architects of the High Republic, were, I don't want to say directly involved with the Acolyte, but I know that they were kind of there, like, maybe overseeing, like, I don't even know what the word is, but I don't think that they were directly involved, but they were there to kind of know the story beats and there to kind of understand what was going on. Yeah. And Vernestra being such a key player in the Project Luminous architecture of the High Republic, like, they had to have some input on sort of what she's been and where she's been and everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we're also not done with Phase 3. Phase 3 is ongoing, and she will appear in the book that comes out in the next, like, 2 weeks called Temptation of the Force. So it's going to be very curious to see how much they divulge in the Acolyte without spoiling the actions that haven't come out in the books that are currently being published.
I feel like anything that's going to happen in that book will probably tie into Vernestra at the beginning of the series, so you know that it's going to take weeks for the series to wrap up, and the book as you said, comes out in 2 weeks. So maybe just enough to tie into what's happening, and then just spin off of that. Or
and we're still, I want to say we're at the halfway mark of Phase 3, so it's not even that just Temptation of the Force is the end of it. Like, there are a lot more books and comics still to come to wrap up Phase 3. So I'll be very curious to see what they can divulge without hitting on any sort of major spoilers for the book, because it's not like Vernestra is like a sidelining player. Like, she's a pretty key part of what's going on right now.
She's a pillar of the High Republic. So
I will tell you, when they announced the Acolyte, and it being a High Republic story, because of the timing on it, Vernestra was not on my bingo card. I really did not
Really?
expect to see Vernestra because, I mean, really, we haven't seen a Mary Ellen live this long. I mean, the key Mary Ellens that we've seen in Star Wars so far are really,
Do you think
um,
her hyperspace travel and those hyperspace visions has led to her life being longer than it is? Because you got to think, people traveling in these hyperspace lanes, it's got to add time to their lives,
I don't know.
or maybe
It
it's just a Mary
was.
Allen thing.
I mean, I don't know enough about like the Mary Ellen culture and the species and sort of
Anybody know?
their.
Let us know in the
Yeah, I don't know.
comments.
To know what's a normal lifespan for them. I will tell you, when they announced the Wookiee Jedi Master, everybody was like, "It's Buryaga. It's definitely Buryaga. There's no way it's not Buryaga," because we know that Wookiees can live for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
So we all heard that. We're like, "We're definitely getting Buryaga," and they're like, "Psych, it's not." So
A loner
we were
Wookiee with
all
a top knot played by Jonas Wotamo. I love it.
we were
Back.
pretty surprised because when they said that there was going to be a tie-in character, like a familiar face from the stories, we really did think it was going to be Buryaga. And then it was Vernestra, and all of us were like, oh. But it has been great peace of mind because with the velocity at which characters die in the High Republic, it's really like a nice, comforting moment to be like, okay, we know Vernestra makes it through all the conflict because she has to survive another 100 years to be in the Acolyte. So everybody else dies, but Vernestra
Yeah.
apparently makes it 100 years.
Oh
So
my god!
go, girl, go.
Imagine all the shit she has seen in that time frame, and
Oh, yeah.
even, like the budding of the Jedi and the Sith War, and just you know probably the and I'm just assuming this because I haven't read it yet. It's no secret I'm a novice to the High Republic, but the end of the Nile and the beginning of like more big bads coming out of it. Um, she's seen a lot of tragedy and she's lived a long life, and it's going to be interesting to see all of that tie into where she is in the Acolyte.
I want to know because again, I don't think that Vernestra is the type of character like I know some people see some similar beats perhaps to an Ahsoka, but I couldn't disagree with that more. I don't think I see the same story beats with like Ahsoka leaving the Jedi Order and then doing the whole like I am no Jedi, but like I got these lightsabers, so I kind of am. I don't get that with Vernestra because I don't think that Vernestra, you know, even when she sort of left to do this whole way seeking thing, I think her heart was still with the Order, but I think she was processing and trying to figure out how she could best serve the Force.
It's great to see a Jedi
as a Jedi
deal with grief in a healthy way for a change instead of just rage. Anakin Skywalker.
Well, there are some really beautiful moments where some of these Jedi who have been dealing with grief, especially after the fall of Starlight Beacon, kind of come back together and try to support one another and try to process that grief
It's
together.
huge.
And what I love about Vernestra is that so this book is fairly recent, so I don't want to get into the spoilers of it, but she ends up confronting another Jedi who is dealing with their grief in really destructive ways and basically saying like, I could not agree with you less on how you're doing what you're doing, and the way that you're behaving has made me lose respect for you. And I read that and I was like, woof. Like she is not mincing words here. So I don't believe that Vernestra is the type to just flat out leave the Order. And I don't think that she ever really did. I just think that the conflict that we saw in phases 1 and 3 of the High Republic really causes these Jedi to look on their way of life and to look at this Order that they've dedicated themselves to and say something isn't working here. And the way that we have been can no longer be. Like we have to evolve if we are going to survive these conflicts. And you see these Jedi absolutely scrambling, like doing terrible, like doing awful things to come ahead. I mean, Avar Kriss literally strikes a deal with the Hutts and says, hey, we're going to go work with the Hutts for a little bit. The Jedi and the Hutts are just vibing together, just hanging out, fighting fights.
Stinky
and everyone's like, what the hell are you doing? And Avar's like, this was the only way. Like, this was the only way to get ahead, was to partner with the Hutts. And so, you see these Jedi really question the Order, but they're questioning it in ways that I think we as an audience have been questioning it since its inception. Like, you look at the Order, you're just like, that's nice on paper, but how does that actually work when XYZ happens?
Yeah.
And the High Republic is exploring that. I think that's part of what
Fun
makes
in
this era
theory,
so
but is
phenomenal.
it in practice? That is
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when you have literal child warriors being told that, like, no longer are they using training lightsabers, they have to use real lightsabers now. And no longer will we honor any sort of, long-standing Padawan deals. These kids literally have to be like knighted by a certain age. Like, you just start to see this absolute desperation of the Jedi come out because
God,
shit's going to hell in a handbasket and they don't know how to deal with anything like beyond
sounds
peace.
like my job.
Rough.
Everybody gets promoted. Let's do this. Deep
It's
into
rough.
the pool.
So I can't wait. This is my Christmas. June is
It is, Mark. It is.
Yeah, desperation is the same as fear. June is my, it literally feels like my Christmas, because we get the Acolyte, and then right on the heels of the Acolyte, we get Temptation of the Force comes out like the next week.
Jamie's gonna be busy.
And that's my birthday, so like, I'm just saying, Lucasfilm, like, more of this would be great. Like, thanks for the birthday gift, y'all.
Now, I have to say, and you saw this in our Rebels and Daughters chat on Instagram and on Messenger, but Star Wars dropped the "Who is Vernestra Rwoh" thing today. Perfect timing. I guess they were listening.
Oh yeah. We're supposed to talk about that.
Yeah, so that was really cool to just kind of have them kind of listen and drop this out to tie into the High Republic, and also like give everybody a crash course before the Acolyte starts.
There's so that article on StarWars.com definitely is resurfaced. Absolutely visit that. And then the High Republic show, hosted by Christina Ariel, has an episode on Vernestra that they were, I think they aired it like towards the beginning of, maybe like the middle of phase 1. So you get a little bit of a taste of her there. The reading order makes all the difference in these books. There's obviously a ton of books, a ton of content. I cannot stress enough to find yourself a good reading order, because they even take like the omnibuses and the trade paperbacks and literally break them down by page, where it's like, okay, so you're at the end of this book, now go read this one comic, but then go read this book and then read the next 3 comics. Like, it really does break things down.
That's really cool.
I know it's a huge undertaking. Yeah, it's a huge undertaking, but I promise you, if you can commit to it, the storytelling is just so good.
As you can see by Jamie's like entire t-shirt, necklace, graded slabbed comic on the background behind there, which is amazing. Yeah, it's
got a lot.
It's worth it.
Got a lot. It's my favorite.
And it's nice when
really
you have something that means, and as Rebels does for both of us, like it means so much to you that it's become like your core thing, your core fandom. So
yeah. And the High Republic, one of the things that I think Star Wars has a big opportunity with is to normalize and to better incorporate some of the diversity that has been lacking in the franchise for a long time, and the inclusion that has been lacking for a long time.
Ace is like amazing.
There's some beautiful representation. It's very organic.
Coming up in June, it's huge.
Yep.
So,
lots of characters using they them pronouns. Lots of characters who are queer in some capacity, whatever the capacity may be. But it's not just for the sake of shoehorning it into a story. It's relevant to the story, and it's handled masterfully. And many of the Project Luminous members themselves are queer people. So it's just, you're getting it from people who have lived experience, which I think is just really wonderful. So the High Republic really feels like home, and it's a very small fandom. We've gotten a lot of flack. It's a very stressful thing right now. And I know we're coming up on the end of time here, but it's a very stressful thing right now, because for a long time, many of the High Republic fans really felt like they wanted to kind of protect this corner of Star Wars, because it was such a peaceful corner. And we were all very happy there. And I made some incredible friends through the High Republic. But now that the Acolyte is upon us and it's kind of going out into this broader audience, many of us are a little bit nervous. Like, we're nervous about the show. Obviously, we want the show to be incredible. we're excited about the show, but there's been a lot of negativity from the rest of the Star Wars population about the High
Yeah.
Republic. So a lot of us are feeling a little bit of anxiety around kind of sharing our home in Star Wars with the bigger audience right now, because we have not been warmly welcomed.
Yeah,
for
and I
lack
feel
of a
that
better.
I felt that way about Rebels too, to be honest. When they started introducing characters from Rebels and in The Mandalorian, we see the Loth Cats. Obviously, for Ahsoka, it's just you want to protect what you love and not have
Yeah.
it be tarnished in any way. It's like mine, like your favorite toys.
We are.
Played with.
Yeah, we it is a really supportive, it's a really welcoming little circle. We are very passionate about it, but we just don't want it to get stepped on, I guess, is the thing. Like,
Definitely
we've been
not.
here for a long time. We've followed all these books, we followed all these authors, we followed all these characters that we've fallen in love with. And now it just feels a little bit nerve-wracking to share them with everybody else.
Yeah.
Like, we don't want to gatekeep, but at the same time we're like, please be good to Vernestra. Like, please take care of her. Like, please
Bubble
love
wrap.
her the way that we love her.
Back to tank.
So it'll be interesting. We're nervous, but we're excited.
Yes.
So we're nervous, but we're excited.
And Star Wars Throwback
We
says
are.
High Republic fans have been the most supportive and welcoming. Yeah, it's a family. So cool.
It's a good little corner. So as always, my socials remain open to talk about any and all things Star Wars. I think I'm gonna be joining the Acolyte. What are we calling it? Like the pre-show show? Like the speculation show. Oh, hi, Mark.
Ooh, hi.
Hey. Ah!
It's the Mark Nolan show. I love that.
I think I'm gonna be joining that to talk with the boys about some High Republic and Acolyte type things.
Rad.
I'll jump in real quick because I was trying to click the wrong thing. It's called Acolyte Eve.
There it is.
It'll be Monday, this upcoming Monday, June 3rd.
And
We are going to
place
pre-record it, and we'll probably do it this weekend. So, Jamie, if you're available, we'd love to have you on the panel. As of right now, it's going to be Mike, Bryce, and John, as they are our in-house High Republic experts, along with Jamie.
Yes.
And they'll be
Yeah,
doing the
perfect,
after
perfect.
show. Same way that we had watch-alongs every Thursday, they're going to be doing the Friday after shows the same way they did for Ahsoka and everything else.
Yeah, I will not be doing that, but I will try to jump in on the Acolyte Eve because, as you can tell, it's
Jamie's life.
We're excited.
It's her
We're
baby.
nervous, but we're excited. So
Yes.
anyway,
I'm
I am too. I am too. I really trust this creative team. So I'm feeling good.
I watched Kristen Baver, who's a writer and she works.
God, I love Kristen Baver.
She's This Week in Star Wars host. She sat in on the roundtable interview with some members of the media and some influencers with Leslie Headland, and listened to her speak about how much she loves Star Wars and how she wanted to get representation across as a queer person in this series, which means pulling from the High Republic. And you just see Kristen's face, and she's just like fascinated, and she's just like listening in on this. And I'm really excited. It gives me
looks
so
at Leslie
much hope.
Headland with such adoration in her eyes, and I'm just like,
but that's how you know, because she gets
Yeah.
it. And if Kristen's looking at her like that, I trust it. So
yeah, I think it's gonna be
Just
okay.
saying, I love
I'm
my girl
excited.
Kristen.
I can't wait. It's gonna be a good one.
It makes me so happy to hear you say that. Let's see. Star Wars Throwback says, I cannot wait for episode breakdowns. Yes, it's going to be so much fun. Can't wait to talk about it. Dave says, the cast looks like they have been having super fun on the red carpet premieres. Yes, I am a huge fan of Lei Jun-jae. Daphne Keane is amazing. It's about time she gets to Star Wars. That little girl was killer. Amandla absolutely killing it on the violin, and
hello. She wrote an arrangement she played an arrangement written for her by John Williams.
Yes, she's a classical violinist. Like,
what?
Girl can do no wrong. Like,
there's a lot of good things happening, and
I'm excited. And of course, our girl Carrie-Anne Moss, who I hope is not limited to a guest starring thing like we talked about.
It is the one thing that's been really hard for me is that one of the characters is named Indala, and we have an Indira already in Star Wars, so in High Republic, so it's gonna be very strange to hear like Indara versus Indira. Like, they're two different characters, but my brain just doesn't work like that.
Yeah. Oh, Lonnie. Yes, it is.
Yeah, it's
amazing.
when this goes to YouTube tomorrow. If you scroll back, we talked about the light whip.
Yeah.
there's
It's
some lore to the light whip.
so cool. So cool. Yeah.
Um,
And she's
yeah, good
Yep.
stuff.
It's
So,
exciting. They better have that in Galaxy's Edge. I'm just saying.
I feel like it's inevitable, and I'm just mentally preparing myself for all the new High Republic crap I'm going to need to buy.
Yep. Make some room next to Stellan on the shelf.
Listen, Stellan's about to go on the wall, and I have a lot of feelings about putting this lightsaber on the wall, and I am very excited about it. So, if we get like, if we get like a Vernestra saber, oh, that's what I should do. Is I should like leave space because I bet you they're going to do a Vernestra saber.
Oh yeah.
And like Stellan next to Vernestra. I'm never going to look at that wall without crying.
It's like you're Kanan and Ezra.
I know they're also going on the wall. I have like space on my walls for lightsabers now.
Yes.
This is not the new office. I'm still sitting on my butt on the floor. Like I have no office.
I
area,
recognize
so,
the shelves, but I am
the
so
stuff hasn't
excited for
changed.
you. I am so
Some
excited
good
for
stuff.
you moving forward and
yeah, there's a lot going on.
big things.
A lot of things
Yes,
happening.
Lily.
So, all right. So,
Gonna
that was
view-
Vernestra Rwoh.
Yeah,
I feel like I just ran a marathon.
No, but it's good. You're so passionate about this
I love it
whole
so
like
much.
section of the universe, and it's great. Oh, Lonnie says,
Laney, I have
"Next to
2
the
of
Savvy's
them.
Hilda HR. Anyone have yet?"
I have 2.
Yeah, she's got 2.
One of the old scrap and one of the new scrap, and
I have the
her
old
friend's
one as
supposed to be
well.
coming down.
So
Yeah,
defense, that's what I got. So
one of my best friends is coming down. We're supposed to do another run, so I'll hopefully get the second set of new scrap. We are getting more High Republic merch. Like it's already starting to happen, and I'm like, it's definitely the fact that we got the Stellan Geos like the limited saber, and then they introduced him to the regular legacy lightsaber lineup.
I have not seen a picture of that in the parks yet.
It's the same saber. It's the same
I figured
saber.
they just
there's no fancy box in a
with
clamshell,
fancy comic and all that stuff. It's fine. My cat is like
we have new Kyber crystals. We have Orla Jareni and we have Indira Stokes Kyber crystals, and they introduced a new High Republic era Jedi from Batu named Kryn. What's her last name? I can't remember Kryn's last name, but she is also one of the options for the new Kyber crystals. Yeah, it's just there's a lot. There's a lot of stuff happening, and I am very excited because some cool shit in the High Republic that I would not mind having on my walls. So
this time next week we will be watching. And the cool part is they dropped some tickets on sale in certain cities across the country to see the first 2 episodes of The Acolyte. And I know the nearest one near me is in Dedham, Massachusetts. Spencer and some other locals are going to go. So congrats to them for getting tickets because those suckers went fast.
I did not get them.
Yeah, so fast. By the time I saw it, it was gone. So
I might just go camp out around Disney Springs and just make eyes at people and be like, "Please, sir, some High Republic for my child." I'm the child. It's me.
It's me.
Just
Look
me.
at my Stellan Geos lightsaber. I am clearly.
Do you understand? Do you understand? I've made this my life in a way that's probably unhealthy. Do you understand that?
Girl,
anyway,
as far as I'm concerned, things like that keep us sane. It's fine. I gladly embrace it. So that is Vernestra Rwoh. We will see her on the Acolyte starting next week. And we got some housekeeping here. Coming up on the VCN this week, whatever's left of this week, tomorrow we have the watch along with the last 4 episodes of the Clone Wars and its cinematic glory. So make sure you jump in with the guys about that. Sunday we have Jedi Archives going over more High Republic goodness. Very excited for that. They're going to be amping up for the Acolyte. And Monday we have Acolyte Eve with a lovely panel of High Republic experts. Jamie, Mike, John, and Bryce, along with Mark. And going to be talking about what to expect from the High Republic in the Acolyte when it drops. So Rebels Revisited will not be back this coming week, but you can watch that. And it's kind of like a little mini Rebels Revisited thing with Mark and Jamie. So that's kind of cool. And I'll be in the comments watching along. And really excited about what's to come. So we get the Acolyte dropping on Tuesday. Tuesday, kids.
I plan on being emotionally compromised for 7 to 10 business days.
Don't call her, she'll call you.
Literally. Anyway, friends, thanks for coming. Hope you learned something new. Hope you're excited about our girl Vernestra. And we will see you in 2 weeks with a shiny new episode about a lady that we haven't decided upon yet.
Yes, but we will get there.
We will get there.
You're welcome. And Mark put a reminder in the chat. Acolyte Week starts Monday, so stay tuned to what's to come next week here on the VCN. And
Thanks,
we'll catch
y'all.
you guys soon. May the
For
force
light
be
and
with you.
life, may the force be with you.
Bye.